Hi, I'm Armstrong and I'm a sculptor. As an artist, I know that great works of art don't just happen. We could walk through a museum or a gallery or into a home and see wonderful pieces of art. We could see a beautiful sculpture that has lyric movement and has beautiful design. We could see a painting that is just luscious in its color and in its composition, and that would have great effect on us. But when we look at it and we see that beautiful work of art, no matter how simple it is, it did not happen simply. It looks like it was done with great ease, and many times if we're a creative person, we will think, oh, I could do that. You know, that's something that I just feel I could do. In spite of that apparent ease, in spite of the simplicity that that painting or sculpture has, many years of preparation had gone into that. If you see a finished sculpture, you would see the final product. You would see the eyes and the shape of the head, and you would see everything where it belongs. But, you know, you have to learn to place those by some sort of a formula, if you will. And so that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to give you a formula to begin. What we're going to begin with is the clay itself. We're going to talk about our material and find out what its properties are, and also our tools. So let me get this clay. Okay, this is stoneware clay, and it's a wonderful learning material. If you were going to use stone or wood and you were carving and chipping away, if you chipped away a nose, it would be gone forever. But with clay, you can take the clay and you can add back. It's an add-on, take-away type of material, and it's so wonderful as a learning material. When you finish your piece, it can be fired in a kiln, and it gets very, very hard. Many pieces have come down throughout the ages that were done in terracotta or stoneware clay. And stoneware is a little different than terracotta in that it fires very, very hard, like porcelain. It's the type of material your stoneware coffee mugs would be made out of. So we'll be using this clay, and the tools that we use, these are the tools that we use. This is a wood tool that I have carved for me. The shape is a simple shape with a rounded end and a pointed end with very sharp sides. These are designed to be an extension of your right hand. I have two alike that are just a finer one and a larger one. What this will do is carve away, and it adds back. And it's wonderful. It takes learning to use this tool, but once you do, you won't be able to work without it. So I use these two wood tools, and then for hollowing the piece, which comes a little later, this is for larger heads and figures, and then this is for very fine areas where you want to get in behind something. This fine wire will just be very good and very helpful. This is a texturing tool, and so we'll talk more about this one later. Now this basically is all we're going to use today. Basically the only tools I use in my studio are these. And if I need something else, a found tool is a wonderful one. I have an old paring knife that I use that's just grand. So we'll start with these, and before we begin with our clay, I would like to talk something about the proportion of the human head so that when I do it in clay, you will already know what direction we're taking. So let me move now to the easel, and I will talk about the large shapes. First of all, we have to remember that in any art form, we look for the large areas, the large shapes, before we start thinking about all the little details like the eyes and the mouth and the intricate shapes around the nose and all those things that people want to get into before they ever begin the entire piece. If you were a painter, you would block in your large shapes of your painting. You would block in the whole basket of apples and not concentrate on one apple. And so the same is true with sculpture. You block in your large shapes that make a statement, and then you start defining all the little areas. So we're going to start with the big shapes. And the head of the shape of the head is an egg. And so we're just going to draw an egg. And then we'll draw that cylinder that will depict the neck, and then the area that the shoulders would take. Now, if someone were to walk into this studio right now, what they would think of when they saw those shapes was a human head. And the reason they would think that is because in their mind's eye, those shapes say a human head. But once we define those larger shapes, then we have to find the placement of the features. And so to do that, we're going to make a vertical line dividing the head. And then we're going to look halfway between the top of the head and the chin and make a little mark. And that mark is 1/2 of the head. And this is where we would find our eyes. So let's just do an eye shape there. And then we would go ahead and mark where our eyebrows are. And then we would measure halfway from our eyebrows to our chin. Find this halfway mark. That would be the bottom of our nose. We would divide the space from the bottom of the nose to the chin into thirds. And this would be the mouth opening. And then the cleft of the chin. So let's make that look a little more like an eye. We'll just darken that in. All right. Now, we did not measure from the forehead. We measured from the very top of the skull to the bottom of the chin. If we want to find the placement of the ears, we would come on around the skull from the eyebrow and from the nose. And here's where we'd find the ear placement, right there. Okay? And after that, then we would decide how this person's hair would be massed on this skull. And we would have basically a human head, just because we knew where the features were placed. Now, if we were to do a child's head, we would not use those proportions. So quickly, let me just show you that difference. So let's draw an egg for a child. Of course, the egg would be a little smaller. The child's head is smaller. And then a small neck, that's indicative of a child, is to have a tiny neck, tiny little shoulders. All right? So there would be a child's portrait bust. Let's go ahead then and divide in half vertically this child's head. And then again, let's look from the top of the skull to the bottom of the chin and make a halfway mark. Now that halfway mark for a child would not be the eye placement, because as a child ages, this bottom part of their face lengthens as they grow older. So we're going to place the eyes beneath that halfway mark and just put them right about there, with the eyebrows there. And again, we're going to look halfway between the eyebrow and the chin and find that nose. This time a little tiny nose with little nostrils. Again, we're going to divide that lower portion of the face from the nose to the chin into thirds and have that little mouth area and the cleft of the chin. One of the basic differences between a child's face and an adult face is the placement of the cheeks. Many times with an adult, our cheeks are broader up here. Our face is lengthened. But with a child, you would just take that cheek and even begin in the corners of the mouth and get that fullness of that lower cheek. And that would give that chunky little look that children have. The placement of the ears is the same. If I were to do that little mark showing the top of the ear is at the eyebrow, the bottom is at the bottom of the nose. This is a general proportion. If I were to tell you that everyone was like that, you would certainly look at a child whose ears were placed very high or very low, and you would say, well, that's not always so. And this is true. It's not always so. But in art, we have to begin with some general proportions. So that's where we're beginning here. And then let's say this child has some little bangs. They always have more skull for their face. The face is in this lower portion of the face. So anyway, this is kind of basic on the children and the adult head. And we're going to do that same thing with clay. These aren't wonderful drawings, but this gives you an idea of the starting place that we're going to have with our clay. So we'll move to the table now and begin doing this very thing with our clay.